Uprising, where young people stood up and revolted against an apartheid government that was imposing learning in Afrikaans. Of course, the harsh response of the government of the day remains one of the reasons we continue to remember that day. Later on, former President Nelson Mandela would say that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world, and that every generation has its own struggles that it must take on. We're joined now by Noncedo Madubedube from Equal Education, Dimpho Lekgeu from Youth Lab, and Sibusiso Masombuka, the founder of Swaggy Online Teacher, to find out what the youth of today are preoccupied with and their level of activism. Let's start. A very warm welcome to all of you. Let's start with you, Noncedo. Just in terms of youth activism, today the numbers that have just come in reporting yet another big jump in COVID infections at a record 9,149. Is this a challenge that's facing the youth of today, and are young people playing their role in the fight against the coronavirus?
So the one thing that I want to start off by saying is that you talk about the kind of repression and police brutality or state repression that was experienced in 1976. And I just want to make it clear that young people in South Africa today are experiencing just as much repression. So when you look at the activity of the beginning of this year and you think about how young people were able to sort of bring a spotlight around police repression in the protests happening across universities at the very beginning of this year for free education, you now start to understand that this has been the experience of communities in South Africa during this lockdown period. So young people are still at the cold face in the forefront of bringing society's issues to the fore and getting immediate responses from our government, from the layman on the ground as well, on the types of experiences that we are going through. And then to answer your question around, given the experience or the third wave looming of COVID, what has been the experience of young people? There are two things there. The first is that over 90% of schools in 2020 reported no cases of COVID in children, which means that the school environment and the school community is in fact the safest place for children to be during this period. But the rotational system that we've had, the online learning system that we've had, has yielded very little results in helping children effectively learn during this period and or be in a safe environment that offers them psychosocial support, food, learning. And the apparent sort of predictions from the department is that it's going to take us between now and 2035 to catch learners up to a pre-COVID conditioning of their education. So we are in crisis, I think, as students and learners in the country. And then young people in general, I mean, the unemployment rate is ghastly. And so our experience of the social ills of our society in South Africa have been compounded incredibly. And we're all sitting inside of that kind of grief. And I mean, I'm keen to hear what Dimpho and Dimpho think is the experience of young people that are inside sort of poor and working class communities right now as well. But I mean, it's looking bleak from our side. And we are talking to each other as young people and thinking about what ways do we sustainably revolt against sort of the kind of socioeconomic challenges that we're experiencing at the moment.
You've raised a few points and we will try to unpack them. But Dimpho, let's bring you in here. Just in terms of the footage that we keep seeing on social media, young people going out to what is termed super spreader events like parties and not taking responsibility for masking. Are young people taking responsibility in terms of COVID-19 in South Africa?
Absolutely. I think I'll answer your question in two parts. So in terms of young people taking responsibility, in fact, it has been young people that we have seen driving a lot of activism during this time, during COVID-19. It's been young people who have been at the forefront of educating their communities. It's been young people who have been at the forefront of establishing or supporting NGOs within communities that are supporting families who are unable to get food, for instance, during this time, who are unable to get shelter, who are unable to get the basic social services that they need to live. And it's been our work to kind of support and enable that activism. And in terms of, the responsibility, young people going out to parties, well, I guess we can ask, we've also seen some political leaders or political organizations, have super spreader events as well. We've seen certain high profile funerals from especially within the royal family. So there have been a lot of super spreader events, and it hasn't just been, I think, young people who haven't been taking precaution during this time. I really think that it's been a societal issue, and we really need to ask a bigger question around whether or not we are still keeping to COVID-19 regulations.
Sibusiso, let's bring you in the conversation here. There's a lot that you've achieved, and part of that is the 2020 South African Hero Award for your initiatives during lockdown when you try to bring students online. You're an educator, but just in the education, in the school space, young people are told what the protocols are, but are they also playing their part in ensuring that these are implemented, that they stay with their masks on, and they're aware of the non-pharmaceutical interventions of trying in the fight against COVID-19?
Yeah, just to echo what Noncedo said earlier on, the learners are doing their part in terms of, or the school environment rather, is a safer space for learners to be in. We as teachers have the responsibility to let them know to wear their masks all the time. We ensure that they sanitize their hands all the time as well. And the kids are working with us. It is a challenge, and it is kind of hard for learners to comprehend how important it is to be safe. But I think also with the surge in COVID-19 cases in our school, it has been a sobering reality for some kids to be like, okay, I'm now going to look after myself and look after the well-being of other learners as well. So I really think that the learners are doing their parts as well. My only worry is when they leave the schooling environment. So the worst case scenario is if we had to go through another extreme lockdown where schools had to be closed, and that would obviously compromise their safety as well.
Yeah. Let's thank all of you for making the time to talk to us this morning. It's Youth Month, and of course would like to talk some more, but we're pressurized for time. Would have loved to go some more into the activations that you're working on, but that will be a conversation for another time. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to us.
Thanks, Desmond.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Noncedo Madubedube is with Equal Education, and Dimpho Lekgeu is with Youth Lab, and Sibusiso Masombuka runs his own projects trying to improve the lives of young people.